All right, it's 7 o'clock. It's good to be with everybody for the study this evening. Hopefully move that back a little bit. Hopefully the sound and everything was worked out and we don't get too much feedback. Always a good sound, I suppose. Does everybody have a copy of tonight's lesson, or do we have some extra copies if anybody needs them? All right, we're going to be talking about honesty. Sir asked me, are you going to tell the truth tonight? Well, yeah, we're going to talk about the truth tonight. A lot of different ways to look at the truth, but it always comes back to whether it's right or wrong. Is it the truth or not? So there's some good stuff in this lesson. I think we'll all agree before we get started that under no circumstances is it okay for a Christian to be dishonest. There's a lot of different ways that people today will tell lies, and so we're going to talk about some of those things. But before we begin, we'll start with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you with humble hearts and great thanksgiving for the time that's been set aside this week for us to study your word, to come together as Christians, to edify each other. Father, we've not seen each other in several days, and it is always a good time to come together to see fellow Christians of like precious faith, to open your word, to see what the scriptures say. Father, and to encourage us to take what we'll learn here this evening and make an application in our lives, for we know and you have told us that knowledge without application is of no gain. So, Father, we're thankful for this evening. We pray that you'll be with all those who might be watching online. Be with the teachers and the kids in the classrooms. Father, be with us here in this auditorium. May the truth always be spoken and may your word always be heeded. Dear God, we're thankful for your Son and his sacrifice to make all of this possible, for the Holy Spirit, for the comfort of the words of salvation that were brought unto us. And dear God, for your grace and mercy always. We love you and we pray for all of these things through Jesus' blessed name. Amen. So, honesty takes a holiday. Yeah. It seems like in this day and age, it takes a whole lot more than just a holiday. It seems like it's almost taken all year off. Not too much time goes by before you can't turn on the television or listen to your local radio station or even go to work before you'd hear somebody not being completely honest. This article here is really directed mostly towards teenagers, although this application can, I think, easily be made to many adults today. There are a lot of folks that don't really learn or understand the difference between, the truth or the whole truth or nothing but the truth, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But a lot of times folks let their conscience guide them, and really what your conscience is just what you've learned over the course of time in your life. If you've never learned in your conscience that it's not okay to steal, then taking what doesn't belong to you is okay. If you've never learned in your conscience or been taught that telling falsehoods or telling lies is not all right, well, then you don't have any problem lying to people. So honesty takes a holiday. One of the things that I made a note of is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be, but lying is the first sin that's recorded in the scriptures, all the way back in Genesis chapter 3. There might be one maybe before that, but we see the first sin committed by Satan in the garden when he lies to Eve. You shall not surely die. Changing but one word in God's command changes the intent of God's command. And we can see that today when someone tells a story, I once caught a fish that was, this big or however it was. And some people, they have white lies and they have regular lies. And then, there are lies that are really serious. And some people think just a little lying is okay. But we'll talk about some of that stuff tonight. And we'll go through some scriptures that the New Testament as well as the Old Testament, what God thinks about falsehood, lying lips. If you read a couple of the first articles, if you worked at a fast food restaurant and you gave free food to your friends, is that lying? Well, we'll talk about that. If you cheated off somebody else's homework, is that lying? So hopefully nobody's sharing their lesson books out there tonight. Hopefully you've done your own work yourself. So it gives a couple of scenarios here. At school, at work, at home. Not a whole lot of places you'll find besides at home and out in the world, I guess, if you really wanted to break it down into those classifications. But for instance, and I really don't want to read through all the rest of these articles. Hopefully you've taken the time to do that yourself. At school, talks about cheating on a test. Now, I'll come clean. When I was a young man, I believe I was a junior in high school. And it was probably the most dreadful I ever felt in high school. I was very busy, right? I'll be a whole lot like this article. Wrestling, work, football, all the rest of these things added up, working outside of school and that kind of thing. And we had an essay that was due about a play, a Shakespearean play. I don't remember the essay nonetheless, but back then, believe it or not, when I was a kid, they actually still had computers. Okay, maybe some of the kids in the back might think, man, they had them all the way back when you were a kid? They did. And I went online, and I found an essay that was all about that play. And I copied and pasted that dude. I changed just a little bit in the title, a few words here and there, and I turned it in the next day. About 2 days later, I walked into the classroom, and the website address where I had gotten that essay was across the board in the back. Turns out 22 out of 28 kids in that class went to the exact same website and got the exact same essay.
Did you tell them they just copied off of you?
I said, boy, they must have copied and pasted my article. I'll tell you what, and we got busted. I got an F in that class. Although I was allowed to continue to stay in school, I was not allowed to pass that class. And looking back on it, I probably should have been kicked out of school for cheating. That was the right thing to do, but the lesson there is, at least for some kids, especially in that age, and this is directed mostly at teenagers, chances are if you lie, eventually you're going to get caught. And one of the things I noticed about lying is it's a whole lot like the rest of the things people do. When you have somebody who likes to steal, they'll steal and they'll get away with it, and what happens? They'll do it again. And they'll keep stealing, and eventually you're going to get caught. Same way goes with lying. You ever notice one lie typically snowballs into another lie? Or if you got a little lie, I got a saying, little lie, big lie. Chances are if you got a little lie, it's to cover up an even bigger lie. Same thing I think happens with a lot of teens today at school. And I got to digging into this article, and some of the excuses these kids gave were, I'm just too busy. I work a job. There's too much homework, so on and so forth. And so I went to find out, are kids today getting more homework than kids 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago? And I thought for sure that they were. I was convinced. I see kids in second and third grade coming home with homework assignments, and I don't remember having homework in the second grade. Maybe you do. But they don't. Kids today are not working any more hours than they were when, 30, 40, 50 years ago, or 20 in my case, or maybe more. They're not getting any more homework than before. So what's taking up so much of this time for them to cause them to want to lie or to cheat on their assignments? One of the things that I came up with, question you got to ask yourself, is cheating today any more prevalent than cheating then? What do you think? Think there's a majority more children cheating today than did back, I don't know, we'll say 30 years ago? Probably not. What do you think? They have more access to online stuff where they can go and they can take essays off of websites, like in my case, or wherever else. Maybe plagiarism might be more common, but what do you think? What do you think is the purpose of an article like this?
I think you're right. I think the only thing different today is technology. Mm-hmm. I suspect that cheating went on. People are going to glance at their neighbor's paper. They're going to, I remember at IU, when I was at IU, there were people that would do essays for you for a fee. Yeah. You could give them the topic and they'd do an essay and it might cost you $20. I never availed myself of it, fortunately, but it was around. You could find it. It wasn't hard to do. So I don't think that's any more pervasive today. I just think the technology is different, and maybe the techniques for finding it is a little better. Maybe. Yeah, I couldn't figure it out. Headline: people are still cheating. To me, that doesn't really seem like a groundbreaker. Brad did this. It didn't really seem like a groundbreaker to me. Headline: people are still lying and cheating. Okay.
I think when you're talking, especially if you're dealing with young people, my guess is if you ask the high school class, they have this idea that when you were in high school, it was so much easier than when they were. And it can be very easy. I mean, I think he makes the point in the article. He's not talking about bad kids. These are kids who feel like they've gotten themselves in a jam and they take the easy way out. These are quote unquote good kids who, or they see everyone else doing it and throw their hands up and say, well, everybody else is, what's the difference?
Right? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe this is just me, and maybe I'm trying to be an optimist here, but I don't really think kids are bad kids. I don't think anybody comes out just a bad kid. I think if people come to the realization that lying and cheating and stealing and all those things are okay, they had to learn that along the line from somewhere. I don't think it's in any kid's nature to just be a bad kid. You know, maybe they get put in a jam, or maybe they feel like they don't have anywhere to go for help or that kind of thing to help get them out of that trouble. But when kids cheat or they lie or they steal, or adults lie or they steal, does it matter what the reason was? If you're a Christian, is there any good reason that you should be excused from lying, cheating, or stealing or whatever? No, there's no excuse for it.
Part of the temptation to do things like this are when you get an advantage from doing it. Understand? So when somebody is able to do it and get away with it, then that puts a temptation on other people to do it because they see that they get an advantage for doing it. You know, I got a better grade because I looked at your work, or I plagiarized somebody else's work and managed to do well. So then that puts temptations on other people to do the same because they want to do well. Yeah. And you got, if you will, an unfair advantage. That's why it's also so important we understand, and you know, with our kids and in our work and other places, the rule is the rule, and the rules are for everybody, because when somebody says, well, the rules don't apply to me, that's when people want to do this, because that's exactly the behavior where they don't apply to me, and therefore I'm going to cheat, I'm going to do whatever gives me an advantage. If it doesn't give you an advantage and there's a high likelihood you'll get caught, you're not likely to do it.
Probably stay away from it, yeah.
Right.
I'll say, if you're cheating off of my homework, you probably want to do your own. I don't know if that's going to help you out too much, Mark. But
kids, you know what? When you're young and you're in school, you cheat on a test. When you're older, you can cheat on your taxes, or you cheat on, you find ways to skate the system so that you can get more accounts or more awards or sell more and so on. So people are always looking for ways to gin the system, as they call it, so that they can get an advantage and get a reward for it.
yeah, and one of the things that does also make that so tempting is it's just so easy. It's so easy to lie. You ever find that? Like, it'd just be the easy way out sometimes to just tell a little line, just brush it under the rug. Sometimes it's just, and Brad, Miss Davis, it's just so easy to tell a lie. Sometimes it's, you're going to get away with it. And that makes it even easier and more tempting the next time you want to tell a lie. Well, I'll get that next big bonus at work. Last time I got away with it. Look at how much money I can make next time.
I'm going to stick up for the kids. I do think there are some bad eggs. I think there are some kids who do cheat just to be punks. But I think there are a vast majority of kids cheating on whatever, plagiarizing, whatever, because they're overwhelmed. Mm-hmm. Homework has changed. Kids do have more homework today than when I was in school, than when you were in school. They're coming home with hours of homework. When they're done with the hours of homework, then they're like playing travel sports. Like they're gone. I mean, they're gone on the weekends. They have practice every day of the week. There is no time for them to study for a test or do the hours of homework. They don't have time. So they're just grasping at whatever straw that they have. So while it's obviously not a good choice, I'm just going to stick up for the kids and say, yes, don't cheat on a test, but
I think
things
there's a
have
lot of
changed and they're
pressure
it's
for them
different.
to perform and to do
There is
better
an
today.
unbelievable amount of pressure for them to perform, and there's not a lot of resources.
Yeah, so I mean, and like I said, I was under the same impression. I don't mean to disagree with you, but I looked at the studies to see how many kids reported they had less than an hour, how many went home with no homework, how many had 2 hours or more, and so on and so forth. And the only discrepancy was kids about the age of 9 seemed to come home with a whole lot more homework than they did back in, I think the study started in 1971, went all the way to 2011. So while we don't have anything, less than 10 years more recent, these kids are, when Beth talks to some of these young kids, especially when they come out of high school and they're coming into college, if they haven't been part of this program or that program, the debate team, if they haven't been on sports, if they haven't done community service work, if they don't have better than a 3.7 GPA, if they don't have, they might not get anywhere into school. Can you imagine having that much pressure? And then they got to come home and you want to have dinner around the table and you want to do family things on the weekends and, where's the time? Kind of feels that way as an adult sometimes too. I'm sure we could easily find reasons to lie or to kind of skirt the system or to go around because we're just so busy. The temptation is always there. And you're right, kids today just have an incredible amount of pressure on them to want to perform. Yeah.
When you don't learn that as a kid, when the adults around you are not guarding and protecting that time, and you learn that, like, go, 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 and constantly on the go, and then as an adult, when you don't ever learn that, nothing ever changes, and so as an adult, you have no way to cope, and so you're cheating on your taxes, because you don't know any other way.
You just learn that that's the way you do it.
Yeah.
If you ran out of time, take the easy way out, the get out of jail free card, or hit the easy button if you remember that commercial or whatever. I mean, that's sometimes the answer that they learn. And, one of the things we have to recognize as adults, and I like to make the application to us since we're doing the study, is we've got to be good examples to our kids that the easy button is not the answer. Okay, chances are you slap that easy button, you're going to make it harder for yourself down the line. It's not gonna, maybe you'll take off the ease from Thursday or whatever day, but probably next week you're going to find out you're right back in the mess again. Mark, and then.
I would say, the danger is that the motive, it's the same behavior, but the motivation changes. When you're in school, your pressure is for grades. Once you're out of school, the pressure is for money, and the consequences are different. For example, give you an example. Business I work in, there are a whole lot of companies where FDA has caught people changing results or actually manipulating them, making them look a little better than they are, so they can sell a drug product that really shouldn't have gone to market. It didn't meet specs. And so now I'm putting people's lives at risk because the boss wants that lot to go, because then we make money on it instead of scrapping it.
Yep.
What made, I just think about the study on the Challenger when that explosion occurred. Krista McAuliffe and that crew that died, it was a culture of we have to make the launch schedule. And the schedule was the king, and it ruled. Even when things were wrong, people weren't willing to tell the truth about the matter. Let's just shade it, let's fudge it, let's do it, let's make it happen, and people pay the consequence. So we need to understand that the culture of what's convenient or what do I have to do now has consequences when we come down the line. And we're not even talking spiritual, we're talking physical, real consequences as a result of it. Not only in the hereafter, but the here and now.
Yeah. I tell you where I see this as we're getting over here to Dennis. You know where I see this a lot today? In the news. Desire to be first for the story. They always got to be the first ones to report it. And then it turns out, like even with that Nick Sandman and, so many of these other stories, it turns out, well, that just was not the narrative. That was not the case. But they got to be first. The pressure to be the first, the pressure to be the best, causes them to want to lie or cheat or steal or do whatever they have to do to get there.
I had a friend of mine one time pointed out in a lesson, I thought it was interesting, I'd never thought about it this way. In John 8, where it says the truth will set you free, one of the things that does is, when I tell the truth, I don't have to worry about things. I don't have to worry that you're going to talk to Derek and find out that I told you 2 different stories. I don't have to worry that my wife's going to pick up my cell phone and see something on there that I shouldn't have on there. It's free when we do things the right way. I don't have to be scared when the boss walks in work, because maybe he'll find out what I've been doing.
Sometimes if you tell the truth, do you still have consequences? Yeah. But it's the answer of a clean conscience towards God. You know, when we're truthful and we're honest and we do those things, you know, at least you get to rest your head on the pillow at night when you go to sleep knowing you did and said the right thing. So I'll ask a question, maybe you can do a show of hands. How many people in here have kids or grandkids? Maybe raise your, you got kids or grandkids, maybe something to that effect, are still alive. So what will you do with this study once you see how important it is, right? What will you do with this to be a better example? Who can you think of this week you can reach out and say, I'm going to take X, Y, or Z off of such and such's shoulders, you know, off a little G's shoulders or little Mike or Timmy or whoever, to make sure that they see the example and know how important it is to tell the truth, and are you doing okay? I mean, I know a lot of them they're on Christmas break right now, or maybe but many of them are still playing sports, or they're going to be getting ready to go back to school in just a couple of weeks. What will we do with this application to make a difference in either our kids or grandkids or somebody else's life? Because it does make a difference if you and I study all day till the sun goes down about how important it is to do the truth if we don't make an application with what we study. It doesn't really help just to sit around and talk about it all day if we're not going to do anything with it.
I think one of the things we do with the truth is tell them the truth, because they're not stupid. I mean, they can figure out when you're lying to them, and then you've violated that trust between parent and child, or grandparent and child, or grandchild, or what have you. And they're looking, as you said, to you as an example. Yeah. And once you violate that truth, you got to earn it back. And it's a whole lot easier to lose it than to gain it.
Yeah. And for a lot of kids, I mean, maybe they won't tell you this, or maybe you do know, some of you are superheroes in their life. You know, they're thinking, oh, Uncle Bob, he goes to church, he's an elder there at the building, and I know he's honest, he's a good man, and then they find out, well, Uncle Bob wasn't so honest with something. That takes away a lot of your credibility going forward, doesn't it? Always have to tell the truth, even sometimes when it may hurt, or you got to find a good way to say it. I'm not saying you come out there and, you blast them in the face with the truth. Hey, I know you think you're smart, but, you're bottom of your class, so you might not amount to much. Maybe that's not the right way to go about saying that, okay? We have to be, yeah, okay, you didn't do so well on that test. Now let's study next time and we'll make a difference, okay? And I'll help you with the time.
And this is very obvious, but I think that one of the biggest things we can do is talk to our kids about multiple different things. I think that a lot of times we just make a blanket statement that lying is wrong, to actual tell or wrong, but we don't talk about the half-truths, and that talks a little bit. We don't talk to them that like lying, like on your, time card, that's stealing from the company. We don't talk to, some of those little things, or we think about lying as a bold-faced lie. We think that they get that, whether they choose to do it or not. But those other little things that even we as Christians have not done the best in. But then also the other thing is sometimes we feel that we are, bragging, I don't know if that's the right word or not, but making sure that when things happen well in your life, like if you as a parent get a job promotion or whatever, and a lot of times those things are, we've talked to the girls many times, the reasons that we've had good jobs is because, we've showed up for work, we haven't stolen from the company, and just being the person that you are as a Christian by not lying, not stealing, being who you should be, your promotion, how you're going to get treated as an employee, and pointing out those examples and telling them those things so they understand, here are some consequences of what can happen in your life when you do what God wants you to do.
Yeah. And let them know, you tell the truth and you do the right things, you will get there. Now, maybe you don't always see it as fast as maybe, Johnny, who lied his way to the top or cheated or did this other thing to get that promotion, to make that, you let Johnny do whatever Johnny does, okay? You're not responsible for Johnny's actions. But if you do the right thing and you tell the truth and you're a good example and you work hard and you make application and you're honest, you'll get there, okay? Sometimes it might take a little extra work, but you'll get there. And sometimes maybe kids just need to know that. You don't have to cheat to get your way to the top. Maybe you have to put in a couple extra hours and a few extra years at work because you didn't fudge that one report that, you know, got your product out the window and you met that deadline, but you were honest. And I think, personally, I think that counts for more than the promotion or the worldly success.
The problem I have is, you know, this conversation is a world that I didn't grow up in. I mean, I can remember my parents, when I first, they let me go out to the movie with a cousin, and my mother told me something to not do or whatnot. I didn't question that. I mean, I didn't want to go back home, and she asked me if I did, because I'd have to tell a lie, or, you know, I told the truth. So, as society gets more liberal, in other words, I volunteered with CASA for several years, and I remember this meeting I went at the school with the principal, the teacher, and whatnot. And the problem that they was having is they were making the problem. In other words, they would take the kids and say, now, you know, you get this done, then you can get on internet, and you can do this and that. And they were opening that up, whereas they shouldn't even had their cell phone in school, or should have been in the locker. So it's the adults that causes this in teaching. And as we know today, the way the homes have broken down, we're having more of that. We don't question anything. In other words, if one of my kids is having problems or this or that, I'd go to the school and I'd talk to the teacher. And in other words, the parents have to let them know that what's going on. Homework, you know, too much homework or whatnot. In other words, we just don't take the responsibility and try to work on the problem.
Yeah, a lot of that stuff, I mean, when you're looking at people who are, specifically this book is talking about teenagers or young kids who are willing to lie or who will lie, chances are they probably learned that behavior from somewhere. Fellow classmate, maybe their parents, from somewhere. That makes me think of it, it's Christmas time. You saw the movie The Christmas Story when Ralphie drops all the lug nuts when he's changing the car, and he says that word, and where did you hear that from? And he calls the mom and he heard it from your son, and that lady goes berserk. You know, is when parents or others find out that their child or whatever the relation is lying, do you make the proper or take the proper action to correct that behavior? Do we still look at, when kids tell lies, do we look at it like it's still a big deal? It is a big deal. If they're willing to lie, chances are they're probably willing to do a bunch of other stuff too. So it's a big deal to address that. I mean, I don't know, you know, whether today's times look like your times, but I can tell you people have been lying since the very beginning. People have been cheating.
A lot of what I've heard here is excuses.
Oh, well, I don't think anybody's making an excuse for it, but we got to understand that if somebody's going to tell a lie, they have to have a reason, more than likely, okay? I know some kids, and I was one of them, that sometimes they just lie about nothing. You ever met that or heard the kid, for absolutely no reason at all, they told a lie for no reason, okay? Still just as bad as if you told a lie for a reason, right? A lie is a lie is a lie. But what we're talking about here is trying to identify the issues for why are they doing that? You know, if I knew somebody here was, you know, you can replace this with any other sin. And some guy here was cheating on his wife. Well, of course, we want to take the proper discipline, but don't you want to know why? Wouldn't you want to go talk to the fella? Say, hey, what are you thinking? You know, or if somebody was stealing from the treasury. Did you lose your job? Was there something else that happened that caused you to take that kind of action? What would make that kind of sin want to come into your heart and you would act on it? How can we help you? Now, you're still going to have to go to jail for a little while, right? But why did you do that in the first place? That's really what we're trying to identify here. Why? Especially with our kids. And I see my daughter coming up and listening to some of the things the kids in her classroom say. And I'll be honest with you, it takes me back sometimes when I hear what another 4-year-old says in the classroom. I'm pretty surprised by it. Maybe you are, or maybe you're not, but you know, sometimes when you hear those things, and I want to teach her, lying is not okay, even if you did it out of ignorance or because you didn't know any better. Lying is not okay just because nobody got hurt. You know, sometimes people think that that's an okay excuse or an okay reason to lie. Oh, it didn't hurt anybody. Well, it hurt your standing with God. I tell you, it hurt that. So we should never, under any circumstance ever, and let me be very clear, never as a Christian can we make an excuse for anyone lying, including ourselves. No matter what. Lying can keep you out of heaven the same way that any other sin can keep you out of heaven, and we wouldn't make an excuse for a murderer, an adulterer, a thief, or anything else. So we have to take the same stance against lying as well, even the little ones, right?
Now, I was just thinking, you made the point, we've all met people for whom it's become a habit. They will lie to you about something that makes no difference whatsoever.
Yeah. What do they call that? There's a term for that. It's pathological. There you go. I was going to say
Yeah.
klepto is the one for the thieves, but
Yeah, but we've all met people like that. Just things that you know are blatantly not true, they'll stand there and tell it to your friend. And I think part of it, I believe, is just a habit. You've gotten used to saying, well, this makes me look better, I'll say this. This makes me feel better about myself, I'll tell you this. And like I said, I'm assuming it's just habit, but we've all seen that.
yeah, I've got somebody in my life, sir, I won't go into who it is, but sir always classifies it as revisionist history. There's a person in my life who will tell themselves one lie after another about what happened in the past to make themselves feel better about the decisions that they made. Because they want to try to make themselves feel better. And they can't stop lying, and they tell it right to your face, and you absolutely know it's not the truth. But they expect you to soak it up.
We knew a man like that. Donis used to say, if he's got his mouth open, he's lying.
How do you know he's lying? His lips are moving.
He told lies to
Guy must have
build
been a
himself
politician.
up.
Yeah.
You know, to make it more important. Don said, no matter what, if there was a group of guys standing around, no matter what they were talking about, he had to go a step farther.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just, you called it a habit, and I think it really was, because he just constantly did it. You couldn't believe anything he told you.
Yeah. I had a note in here that there's a lot of things people will tolerate, but a liar, I find. You know, I know people that they know and have people in their lives that have cheated on their wife or have done all these other crazy things, and they've just done one thing after another, and they're still hanging out with them, but man, they won't tolerate a liar for very long.
You mentioned it, and I want to just kind of echo a little bit, and I've mentioned this in here before in classes, but the Catholic Church has what they call a mortal sin and a venial sin, and we often say white lie. A white lie doesn't hurt anybody, so it's okay. But God does not make that distinction in the Scriptures.
Right.
You see a lie along with murder, along with whatever horrible separation from God that you can think of, and there's no distinctions, if you will. There's no weighting. There's no calibration of a sin. Anything that separates you from God is a sin, and a lie separates you from God.
That's right. How many lies do you got to tell to keep yourself out of heaven? One. How many times you got to cheat on your taxes to keep yourself out of heaven? Here's one for you. How many times do you have to break the speed limit to keep yourself out of heaven? How many people here broke the speed limit on their way in tonight? Maybe you'll answer that question honestly, but is that a law you broke? Was that honest? Doesn't matter how little it is, does it? Does somebody have to die because you lied in order for it to be a bad lie? The Bible doesn't make that distinction. A lie is a lie is a lie. And if it'll keep you out of heaven, it's important.
I think a lot of times, I thought as you were talking, a lot of times what we do is we just lie to ourselves. I think a lot of times when we get up and when you hear guys give the invitation, that's what we're trying to get people to think about. Are you sitting there in that seat thinking, oh, I'm okay. I know I haven't done this, and I know I haven't done this, but I'm okay. When you know intellectually you're not.
Yeah.
But you can tell yourself, well, I'm okay, or well, I'll fix it later. And we can lie to ourselves, we can even believe it. And I think a lot of times we still intellectually know it's a lie, but you don't want to believe it. You don't want to believe you're doing something you shouldn't. You don't want to believe that I really did do that and I really do have to make it right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always thought, and all the time I've been in the church, I said, is it really a good sign when you go years and years and years without anybody coming forward? Something to think about, isn't it? Really, in all that time, nobody did anything? Not a one? That's pretty good.
I was kind of thinking along the same lines as Dennis, and, you know, I think sometimes where we as Christians go through times when we're very guilty of living a lie. We've been talking a lot about speaking a lie, words coming out of your mouth, but you can be a liar and never open your mouth.
That's right.
You know, when we made a commitment, when we confessed and we were baptized, that commitment says, this is going to be the guiding force in my life. This is going to be the most important thing in my life. This is what's going to determine all of my choices. And then we come here on Sunday and we sing and, you know, I'm resolved no longer to linger. And, you know, Jesus is all the world to me. And then we go home and we live like the world.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we're pretty sure nobody at church is going to see us. Or, you know, and this is the one, and you and I've talked about this, this is the one that just upsets me so much, you know. We tell our kids, this is important. We want you to be a Christian. You know, we want you, but we don't live like that at home.
Yeah.
You know, we don't show them it's important. We don't make them go to Bible class. They don't want to go to Bible class. We don't have time to do that. You know, we've got time to do everything else in the world, but we don't have time to do that. You're lying to your kids.
Yep.
And I just think probably at times we're all guilty of that.
Yeah. You can make an application there with how many parents or grandparents or whoever here tells their kids or their grandkids how important it is for Bible study and to be ready and be prepared and then you showed up without your homework done. You know, and that's being dishonest. You're telling other people how important this thing, your commitment to God is, and then we ain't living it. I've been guilty of showing up without my stuff ready. We got to live the same. The audio has to match the video. You got to be living the same way that we're talking. If we're talking about being a Christian and following God's rules and how important it is to live the Christian life, are we showing that in our example from day to day with them? Little eyes are watching, right? So I wrote down here something I wanted to just take a few minutes to talk about. Maybe any of you ever watched like a courtroom drama, or seen a movie, somebody goes to court, or maybe you've even been to court, or I know, Gene, you said you've gone and you've testified on behalf of kids at court. They always make you raise your hand, and you got to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Yeah, so help you God. Well, they don't make you say that anymore, and they really ought to. That's a study for a different day, maybe. But why do you think they make you say that? Is that repetitive? Well, you just said the same thing 3 times, right? Who thinks they can explain to me what the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? How can you make and maybe afterwards you can make a good spiritual application of that?
You started out this class talking about Satan. You justify that by saying, well, you know what? You didn't really die. I mean, you walked out of the garden. God didn't kill you. So I wasn't really lying. I just twisted it a little.
So if I said, Dennis, you got to tell the truth, does that still leave you some doors open, maybe to Not be honest? Yeah. What about the whole truth? You think sometimes people can tell the truth and then maybe they'll leave out a few things that might make them maybe not look so good? Yeah, the lie of omission, right? We can commit that sin of omission. What about nothing but the truth? Well, I told nothing but the truth. I just sprinkled a little extra in there. You know what I mean? Just throw a little extra in there. There's a reason. Now, a spiritual application for that is that when we live our lives with the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you ever seen this where maybe somebody does something in their life and they got to kind of back their way into the scriptures to try to justify it? Marriage, divorce, and remarriage. That's another one right there, right? As Christians, we don't have the opportunity to tell the truth and then leave some things out that might make us look so bad. We might have told things that are true. But the sin of omission can still invalidate your citizenship in heaven. What about if you added a little extra? Does the Bible warn us against that? Anybody remember maybe Revelation? You shall not take anything away or add anything to, because then it is no longer the truth. Anytime we put a modifier in front or behind something, it's no longer the thing it originally was. You can make this application with social justice. If I put a modifier in front of it and make it social justice, then it's no longer justice. I've changed it. If we change what the scriptures say, if we change what God gave us by either leaving something out or adding something to, you no longer have the truth. We see it oftentimes with baptism in the denominational world. What do they leave out? Or the pathway to salvation, I should say. I guess maybe I just gave you the answer. Right, we're going to have G with it. They'll leave out baptism and still tell you you're saved. Or maybe they'll add in something else. You got to go on a missionary trip around the world. You got to spend a whole year doing such and such and such and such before you can consider yourself saved. Or you got to go to school before you can preach.
Well, Romans 10:17 emphasizes the importance of faith. And we obey the gospel at 15, 16, 20, whatever. And our whole life after that, we are continually, like we're in this Bible study tonight. Why are we here? Because we learn and we relearn some things maybe, and our faith grows. And also, the best compliment I can get anything from one of my grandkids is Poppy know about that? Because if they know, if Poppy knows that or what's going on, that Poppy's going to talk to him. And that's a deterrent, and we all have to have that.
Yeah, we have to be that, you might say that cornerstone for them, for other people, for our kids, and for others who feel like maybe there's nowhere else I can turn to. But if, Poppy knows about it, he's going to talk to me about it. He's going to set me straight. He's going to tell me the truth on it. That ought to be something that each one of us strives for all the days of our life, to always be a person where if somebody needs to hear the truth or know the truth, they know they can come talk to you and that you're going to give it to them. Good, bad, or indifferent. Sometimes, the truth is hard to hear or something like that. The truth hurts. Sometimes the truth hurts. And sometimes the truth is you're not in good standing with God right now because of the way you're living. That'd be hard to hear, don't you think? Or, I don't trust you anymore because I caught you lying. That was always one thing for me. If you were always on my good side, and maybe this is the same way with you with people, until I found out you lied. Now all my trust in you, all my faith in you is gone. You're going to have to build that back. And I tell you, sometimes it's a lot harder to build back than it was if you just would have told the truth in the first place. Thankfully, spiritually, that's not the case for us. That, it's it's easy, I think, to obey the gospel if you read what it says and you learn those things and you have a good, honest heart, you can obey the gospel. And if you transgress from that, I mean, thankfully, God doesn't make me jump through the same hoops sometimes I've made other people jump through just to get back in my good graces. So, hopefully we've had a good talk about honesty. Lying is no good. You know, headline people are still lying, cheating, and stealing. Don't be one of them. Be different. The Bible tells us to not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of our minds, right? We have to be different. So if you take anything away from that, maybe make some application. Whose life can you change this week, even if it's just yours? And don't be like the rest of the world. Lying and cheating and stealing, those things are always easy until you get caught. But it can keep you out of heaven just the same as anything else. Let's make sure we're honest. Next week, I think we talk about politics and religion. Isn't that good? We've started honesty, and then we're going to follow it up with politics. You can't hardly find too much of that these days. Right? It is two studies of the same thing. How do you know they're lying? Their lips are moving. So, it's been a good study. Thank you for all your attention and your preparation.